Hi everyone, welcome to the channel. Today we will be looking some DevOps known as the pulumi, how we can use it. I've seen lots of other infrastructure as a code tools, but today we will be specifically looking to the pulumi, why we want to use pulumi and why pulumi is better and what advantage that it gives. So just let's get started. Now, as we can see, how pulumi is different as an infrastructure as a tool. In the market, there are currently two more famous tools. One is Terraform and one is infrastructure as a code. However, if you go to the different cloud providers, they have their own, but they are not so much famous because they are specific to the vendors. So you don't want to get locked into the vendor, so they don't want to use like AWS CDK or Google Cloud or Azure. If you don't want to be in vendor specific, you need to go with either Terraform or either pulumi. Now Terraform is more mature because it is from very long days, so there are lots of communities involved on Terraform. However, pulumi is latest, so you don't have much communities on the pulumi compared to the Terraform. However, pulumi is designed by engineers for engineers. So why you want to choose pulumi? The first things comes if you are a programmer or not. If you are either doing programming in TypeScript, JavaScript, Go, Python, .NET or Java. If you are on that background, so infrastructure as a code with pulumi makes it a little bit easier. However, if you are a non-programming side, so you are just a DevOps guy who does everything, who doesn't have any knowledge of either of any of the languages, so might be Terraforms will be easier for you. So pulumi has two things. One is native with cloud providers and one is Terraforms. Now pulumi under the hood on the previous versions, they used to have Terraform dependent. Now with the native release of 3, they have a native version. So for each specific cloud, they have their own native. So what makes the pulumi different compared to Terraform? Now when you write an infrastructure as a code, you will have a developer or any DevOps engineer. They write, if you are using a Terraform, then you won't be using YAML or Terraform specific language, which is known as the HCL. Now if you are learning Terraform or if you are using YAML or JSON for each cloud provider, you need to know the specific language for this. So for Terraform, if you're writing Terraform, you need to know the HCL language. Now if you are a programmer, if you have a knowledge of Python, Go, Java, TypeScript, why you want to learn another new language which is domain specific? Now HCL is only used in Terraform. There is no other areas that HCL specific language is in use. So might be this Terraforms for coming 10 years or again 20 years, this language will not exist. So if you are thinking that way, why you want to learn a new domain specific language? Now for the YAML and JSON makes it a little bit easier to understand, but it gets complicated when you have a complex things like loops, conditions. If you want to like logic, your JSON or YAML doesn't gives you more benefit. So if you are from the non-background sides and if you are doing first time as a DevOps, so if you are going with the Terraform, then you need to learn HCL, which is domain specific for Terraform. And if you are doing with a cloud provider, either CDK or their specific language, then you are going either with YAML or JSON. Now if you are a DevOps, you can go with Terraform, because if you don't have any programming language of Java and Python, and HCL learning one language, it makes more easier and it is very easy to learn. But there are limitations with Terraform and JSON. But if you are a DevOps guy, even if you want to go with Terraform or YAML or JSON, then things get complicated when you have a logic. So something like something, if you want to write more logics like conditions, like if you want to say provision this infrastructure if something conditions match, and if you want to write loops, and if you want to write reusable functions. So for loops, if you want to create a 5 same structure instance in same environment, so you don't need to write a 5 times, just create a loops and run on those loops, and it will create an infrastructure for use. And if you want to share a code, if you want every infrastructure to reuse the same logic, and based on the conditions you render all those infrastructure, so you can use pulumi for that one, because you already know the oops concept if you are from java.net. So oops concept gives you write all those things with functions and variables. So that's the main advantage of pulumi, because you can use any language, it doesn't depend. So if you are onto their official website, so you can see it's in any programming language. So if you go to the get started, so you can choose which one you want to go. There are 4 providers: AWS, Azure, Google Cloud, or Kubernetes. You can pick any of those, but we will be mostly looking at the Google provider, because I'm doing all my projects in Google provider. So if you select this one, now if you have basic templates, all those things over here, and you click on the get started, so you need to have something installed on your machine. So if you are using Mac, because I'm using Mac, I already have a pre-installed pulumi, so just you can copy this one and it will install a pulumi for this view. Now this totally depends on you which programming language you're gonna pick up. So if you are using a TypeScript, you need to install a Node.js. Same for Python, you need to have this. For Go, C#, .NET SDK, and Java for this one. I am picking up Java with Java's 11 or later, but I have a Java latest version, so I'm picking up Java. So once you install a Java project, you need to create a project on GCP. So for creating a project on GCP, because you need to provision because you're gonna run a pulumi from your local computer or either administrator computer, you need to have those credentials. So if you need to create one project over here. So I've created something called Fettybird. You need to create one project, and once you create a project, you need to have a service account. So because this is the authorization process how Google Cloud works. So you need to have this created one service account, and you need to download this key, because from this station service provider account, that's how the Google provider works. You need to communicate with the pulumi command, because when you run a pulumi command, it will look for this authorizations, which is a service account. Or if you are login with the cloud console, it will ask you every time to log in, but better if you go with pulumi, this will all things work, it will work. So once you have this G-Cloud authentication, or if you have a service provider authorized access, you can go and create your own project. Now because I have a Java install, so you need to create a project directory, something called mktrict, and you need to go inside that one. Now pulumi new GCP pro, this is the pulumi CLI command. So once you copy, and this one, it will create a project for you. So I'll just open the project that I have created. Inside I have a folder, something called GCP deployed, and inside GCP employed I have Kubernetes with Tecton. So I will be doing some next videos on Tecton, because once we provision our infrastructure, we need to deploy some code to the cloud. So we will do it by using a Tecton pipeline, which uses the Kubernetes things. So over here I have a GCP pulumi, which is a Gradle project. If you see gradle.wrapper, and if you see a build.gradle file. So once you have this project, which is a basic project, how you do a Java application, you need to install two dependencies. One is pulumi 1.0 and one is GCP pulumi GCP, because we are doing with GCP things. We are not dealing with any other provider. This depends on the different provider how you deal with this. Just need to include these two dependencies, and it will sync your project. And then this is an void main application. How does Java application works? So I have created one configuration file to get all the project, because once you create a pulumi project, it will ask you which Google GCP instance you want to deploy, and that is the project name. So I have this project name which is under the pulumi common dev YAML, and pulumi YAML is some of the project names that you set up under this one. And you need to provide this pulumi authorization things, because from here only when you run the command it will pick up this file, which is the service account file that I have downloaded at JSON, and it will pick up this configuration and run your command. So once we see that, I have created one class, something called create bucket. So if I go inside this one, GCP storage, I have a command. See, if you see, this is just a Java application. It doesn't new our things, because you already know Java. This is class and you're creating a new method. So once you call this method, this bucket, which is another from the library, it will create a bucket, which in bucket name give you a bucket name URL. That's it. You are creating an US instance and your build. That's the bucket name it's gonna create. So if you come back to the terminal, since this is a Gradle project, so for validation you can use Gradle build or anything, something called Gradle build over here. It will run your Gradle build, and you can do Gradle clean to see how you how is there any syntax error or not. Once this is done, you can just run pulumi up. Now once you run the pulumi up, it has a concept of stacks. So it will compare your previous environment with the current environment, either you have created or not, if you need or not. If you see over here, I have already previously created a bucket, and I have not created a bucket, so it will create a bucket which is a plus sign, and I have two. One is the service and one is the repository. So I am removing those service and repository. It's gonna delete those things. So and this will give you a preview. So once you select this one, yes, and you can see a logs over here what's happening. So it's creating this one, and you can either see it's deleting a service and repository instance for you. So when we got successful message over here, and if you go back to our GCP, and if you we go back to the storage, cloud storage bucket, which is inside this folder, I can see my bucket, which is CAD, the extra IDs that it does. So this is how the pulumi helps. It just, you need to know the language and it will create for you. And if you want to have Kubernetes pod nodes created, pulumi makes your a lot of things easier. Thank you for watching, and if you like my content, please subscribe for more content.